Good evening, and welcome to this evening's edition of the VisionRoot video blog. I'm Richard Urban, your host, coming to you from Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I'd like to start with a reading from the Bible and from also the teachings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. First, our Bible reading. Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out that it might be plain that they all are not of us. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all know. I write to you not because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and know that no lie is of the truth. Who is a liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ. This is Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son. From 1 John chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. And now from the teachings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Who would have known that the disciples would stand in the position of the Antichrist before Jesus? Who would have known that the chosen Israelite people and Judaism would have become the Antichrist? We must be concerned about this in the last days. 2. You must reflect on yourself whether you stand in the position of the Antichrist. Now is not the time to reproach others or interfere with the affairs of others. The problem lies with you yourselves. Other denominations that oppose us are not the problem. You must worry about the fact that you might become a Satan in the last days. Throughout the course of history, those people who blamed others for their problems have all lost themselves. That is from World Scripture, page 526. So, I'd like to address a topic, and my title tonight is The Golden Age of Unificationism. Well, there's been a lot of controversy recently about the movement of those who are upholding the teachings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and those people are in the movement known as the World Peace and Unification Sanctuary. Well, I've noticed a number of points about those who don't understand or don't, keep the traditions of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, like keeping his scriptures and the texts that he designated and the traditions they designated, like absolutely good sex and things like that. Specifically, honoring the scriptures. First of all, I've noticed that a lot of those who are not supporting the work of Reverend Sun Hyung Moon, they also turn a blind eye to corruption. For instance, I went before the then district council, which interestingly was disbanded, that had been newly formed under, at that time, President of the Family Federation, Hyung Moon, and told them about corruption in D.C. church, misuse of church property, serious corruption of leaders there, and the 12 people in the council said basically, so what? And did absolutely nothing. I also forwarded the concern to National Council, and they basically said, well, this isn't a big problem, so we're not going to do anything. Okay. They never bothered to look into the serious concerns that I had. And by the way, if you email me or message me, I'll be glad to send you tons of documents about that situation, which in many ways is actually still going on in the Washington, D.C. church. So, turning a blind eye to corruption is one thing. And another thing is, oh, by the way, recently Mr. Larry Moffat wrote a big editorial, and he was one of the ones who wrote me that in spite of all reading my documents, he still would just stick with, whatever was going on. He didn't seem to have too much problem with it. Okay, so turning a blind eye to corruption. Another one is conflict of interest. Many of those who are writing and speaking about these things, either they work for the Family Federation or some related organization like the Washington Times, or their families do. Well, by the way, I'm a volunteer for the World Peace and Unification Sanctuary. I do not work for Sanctuary. Well, that's a huge conflict of interest. Is there anything inherently wrong with that? Well, I guess not. But there's the old saying, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I found that throughout my life, that is very true. So take that into consideration if you discount those people. Well, those are some of the most vocal people out there. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. Also, I'd like to ask, if this is the golden age of unificationism, how did Mother, for instance, select Mr. Monho Kim as her personal secretary and the leader of the Family Federation World Headquarters, who has now been demoted, but have you heard any announcement about that? Well, no. Nothing is transparent at all. It's completely non-transparent. And also, Mr. Monho Kim, as I point out in my other videos, he is a member of the Che Amrine group, which has strange sexual practices, and his wife was living here in the D.C. area. He came to D.C. sometimes, but he never showed up in any public place, any church in the D.C. area when he was here. And then he was in Korea most of the time. And in other cases with that Che Amrine group, there's a separation of the husband and wife. In one case, one brother told me his wife has more or less disappeared and is in no contact for 2 or 3 years. So this is was True Mother's chief secretary. So you have to ask, what is going on here? What kind of things are going on during this golden age of unificationism? I mean, if that's the golden age of unificationism, I mean, really, I'd have to wonder what the non-golden age is. I mean, that's a serious concern. So I'd also like to read one more scripture this evening. Father said in Owner, Peace, Owner of Lineage, a book that is no longer one of the scriptures of, promoted by True Mother. So you need to publish this precious book, which is Punghwa Shin Gyung, or the Peace Message, in the original text as read by parents. This is what will last for thousands and even tens of thousands of years. In the future, this should be printed on paper made with diamonds, made with gold and platinum. This book sets a standard as comparable to the 1-meter bar that is housed in the Louvre. The Louvre is a museum in France that contains the standards of all units of measurement. That's from Owner, Peace, Owner of Lineage, July 7, 2009. Yet the words of True Father have been changed. The Peace Messages are no longer a separate book, and they're not in the original format that Father said, and parts of it aren't there anymore. Well, that's completely disunited with what True Father said. So, I mean, take it for what you will, but it's definitely not united with what Father said. So those who keep saying, Father is united with Mother, they are true parents. That doesn't make sense. And one of the most striking things, recently Hyungjim talked about, he mentioned about the whore of Babylon, and that's caused a lot of controversy. Well, one of the things that struck me in the sermon was that this whore of Babylon is a widow who refuses to be a widow. And I've often thought, and I've mentioned on some of the forums, why does Mother call herself true parents all the time? If Mrs. or Mrs. Smith, or husband and wife, and Mr. Smith dies, do you say, hello, hi, I'm Mr. and Mrs. Smith? It's like, hello, are you okay? No, it's like, so this really brought it into sense for me, what Hyungjin said. From the scripture in Revelation, refusing to be a widow. Refusing to accept that position, of the bride of the Messiah. So, that really shows something also about, what is going on. So, I'd like to end with a short testimony. So, I'm the DC Leader of World Peace and Unification Sanctuary, but I run my own ministry, and I did before I became the DC Leader of Sanctuary. It's called VisionRoot Ministries. And I'm still free to do that, and I run it as I see fit. No one calls me and says, hello, Richard, do this, make a video, do that, say this, say that. Well, since about 2002, when I founded Urban Life Training, nonprofit, many times I would try to work with Family Federation. I did work with, CARP and people coming from Ukraine and certainly different individuals. But oftentimes, it didn't really go anywhere. It was like I was at odds with the Family Federation, Could I announce and promote my workshop? No, we're not going to announce your workshop. Oh, okay. I thought I was promoting abstinence. No, we don't want that. Could I give a testimony to the church? Well, let's see. One time I gave a testimony for 7 minutes at Family Church. That's about it. Generally, no, we don't want you to give a testimony. Nope. Etc., etc., etc. Well, I have to say, I'm so glad to be free of that oppressive regime. Who needs that? With support like that, who needs enemies? So I'm perfectly able as a Sanctuary DC leader to run my ministry as I see fit and be affiliated with Sanctuary. That is the world of freedom. So if you like a centralized bureaucracy, I mean, that's your choice. And a corrupt one where nothing is transparent. I mean, look at this Mr. Manho Kim debacle. Look at Mrs. Hyunam Kim debacle. If that's what you want, then go for it. It's not transparent. And if that's your golden age of unificationism, good luck on that. So that's my comments and thoughts for tonight. Thank you for listening. I am Richard Urban on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. with a VisionRoot video blog. Until next time, God bless, may God bless and keep you.